Working in a morgue isn't just about science. It's about silence. The kind that presses on your chest when the lights flicker. Those of us who spend our lives dissecting death know something the living rarely understand. Not all remains are still. Sometimes the body holds on. Sometimes it whispers back. These are the stories that never made it into the reports. The stories we don't talk about, not because we don't believe them, but because we do. Working in death's shadow doesn't just harden your heart, it sharpens your senses. But sometimes what you sense can't be explained by muscle memory or reason. It lingers behind your eyes when you close them, and worse, behind your ears when you're alone. It was a wet November morning when they brought him in. The John Doe from the river, found snagged on the rusted underframe of a shipwreck on the Duwamish, fully clothed but barefoot, no ID, waterlogged, mud in his mouth and moss in his hair. That wasn't unusual. In fact, the city has a way of swallowing people and returning them half digested. But what caught my attention wasn't the state of the body. It was the expression on his face. Even in death, even after what the water did to him, he was smiling. Not a soft, accidental smile. This was deliberate. The corners of his lips curled with tension, like the last thought in his brain had been triumph. I remember pausing at the foot of the gurney, my gloved hand frozen mid-motion. I'd seen corpses with all manner of expressions, but never this one. Not like this. His skin was bloated but intact. Remarkably so. No bruising, no obvious trauma, just the signs of prolonged immersion. As I began the Y incision, I felt it. A static undercurrent, a silence too still, too measured. I paused. The blade slipped slightly in my grip. I told myself it was just fatigue. My fourth case of the day. But as I spread the chest cavity, something strange happened. A sound. It came not from the hallway, not from the pipes or the flickering light overhead. It came from the body. A whisper. I froze. I'm not proud of it, but I backed away, scalpel in hand, and stared. At the open chest. At the smile. I knew it was impossible. No lungs, no airflow. And yet I swear to God it sounded like a voice murmuring from inside. Not words, not yet, just intention. I double-checked the audio logs. Our new autopsy tables have voice recorders for dictation. There was interference, static, the kind you get when you leave a phone near a speaker. I isolated the anomaly and played it back. This time, there were words, very faint, barely more than breath. It stays with you. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, not then, but because I kept thinking I'd made a mistake, that my tools had malfunctioned, that maybe the recording was corrupted. I rechecked my equipment, ran diagnostics, even asked IT to review the file. They said it looked clean. I started reading through our cold case files, dozens of drownings, overdoses, accidents. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. And then I found it. A report from 2012. Another John Doe. Found in the same section of the river. Same water damage. Same smile. Also barefoot. Over the next week, the room began to change. I know how that sounds. But I've worked in this morgue for 11 years. I know its sounds, its smells, its timing. Now, the temperature monitor flickered when I walked past. The vent near Station 4 would breathe, like a sigh, even when the system was off. I started catching movement in the reflection of the surgical lamp, only to find nothing when I turned around. One morning, I arrived early and found the drawer where I had placed John Doe slightly ajar. Inside, his eyes were open. That was the first time I documented anything officially. I took photos, filed an anomaly report, but I knew no one would take it seriously, not unless they experienced it themselves. And so I invited Dr. Hargrove to assist with the second stage dissection. We began the cranial procedure just after noon. Everything was sterile, silent, normal, until we opened the skull. At the moment we removed the calvarium, the power went out, only for a few seconds. But when the lights flickered back on, Hargrove looked off, pale, sweating. He stared at the body, then at me. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. It said your name. I wanted to laugh, call it nerves, suggestion. But I couldn't, because I'd heard it too. It said, Elaine. 3 days later, Hargrove took medical leave. Night terrors, anxiety, night sweats. He wouldn't return my calls. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I looked back at every unexplained death along the Duwamish for the last 20 years. At least 6 were classified as accidental drownings, but all were missing shoes, and all, according to intake photos, had that same smile. I ran tissue samples from the latest John Doe, mitochondrial DNA sequencing. I don't know what I expected, maybe familial matches. But what I got was a hit. He was genetically identical to the 2012 John Doe, not related, identical. I stopped sleeping entirely. I stayed at the lab past midnight, going over slides, reviewing footage, listening to that damn audio over and over. It stays with you. Elaine, what was it? That was when the dreams began. Not dreams, really. Images, snapshots, a river at dusk, a man standing ankle-deep in water, smiling, barefoot. In one vision I saw my own body laid out on the table, the Y incision already begun, and something, leaning over me, whispering. The next body we received was a teenager. Overdose. No signs of trauma. Her case had nothing to do with the river, but the moment I touched her skin I felt it again, that low hum beneath the surface, like distant thunder, a frequency only the dead could hear. Her autopsy was clean, normal, no anomalies. Until I closed her up. She smiled. That week, 3 other pathologists in the building filed for leave. The receptionist, Tamara, refused to enter the autopsy suite. She claimed the drawers were opening on their own. Our janitor quit after witnessing a face in the glass reflection of the tissue prep room. I reviewed the footage. There was no face, but there was movement, a slow rise, a shape behind the exam table, a blur where there should be stillness. I made the decision last night. I filed a formal request to transfer to the Eastern Division. But when I went to retrieve my personal case files from storage, I found a note, folded, typed, unsigned, tucked into my locker. It stays with you. And on the back, not in the body, in the cut. Tonight will be my last shift here. I'm supposed to prep an unclaimed body found near the old docks. Same smile, barefoot. But I already know what I'll find. Not tissue, not trauma. I'll find myself, mirrored in the stillness, reflected in the steel. I've come to believe it's not the water that takes them. Not entirely. It's something older, something that moves through incisions, like smoke through cracks, something that waits for you to open the body so it can open you. And if you ever hear your name, not from a voice but from the silence, you'll know it found you too. They say working with the dead makes you forget about fear. But they lie. You don't forget it. You just get used to it, scratching at your bones until it feels like part of you. I'm a forensic technician, and I've handled over 1,000 corpses in the past 11 years. Gunshots, jumpers, drownings, and once even a man who died laughing in a casino bathroom. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what came with Drawer 7. It started on a Thursday. Rain hammered the roof of the Kingsbridge County Forensics Building with the kind of violent rhythm that makes everything feel closer, like something's outside pressing its face against the walls. We'd just taken in 3 bodies from a highway accident, but it was the 4th, the unidentified man from an alley downtown, that I was assigned to. The police said he was found in a fetal position behind an abandoned theater. No wounds, no signs of a struggle, and no ID. He had no tattoos, no scars, and no fingerprints in any database. But it was his face I couldn't shake. He looked peaceful, eyes closed, lips parted ever so slightly, as if he had fallen asleep mid-conversation. But the stillness wasn't natural. It was too posed, too rehearsed. And his skin was cold in a way I can't explain. Not the usual death cold. It was sharp, like glass, the kind of cold that gets inside your gloves and spreads up your arm. I logged him under case 1142 and assigned him to Drawer 7, the last slot on the bottom row, right side, furthest from the door. The drawer had a tendency to jam, but I didn't think much of it. That night I dreamed of a dark hallway filled with metal drawers. One by one they opened slowly, but drawer 7 never did. It stayed shut, vibrating like something inside it was pounding, softly, rhythmically. I woke up with a nosebleed. The next day, I returned to work and found something odd in the logbook. Drawer 7 had been marked opened at 3:17 a.m., but there was no corresponding signature. We don't have night shifts in that sector, and only 3 people have keys: myself, Dr. Haynes, and Officer Lindstrom. I called both. Neither had come in. I checked the internal surveillance footage. The timestamp showed a flicker, a single second of static, and then nothing. The entire wing went dark for exactly 6 seconds. When the lights returned, the drawer was closed, but the body had shifted. Originally, I'd placed his hands crossed over his chest, as is standard procedure. Now, his hands were folded behind his head, like he was lounging on a beach chair. No one else had been recorded entering the morgue. I reported it to Dr. Haynes, and he told me to get some sleep. "Your mind plays tricks when you're around the dead too long," he said. Maybe he was right. But when I returned to drawer 7, I noticed scratches inside the stainless steel. Not random scuffs, not the kind you'd expect from gurney movement. These were lines, symbols, circular, almost runes. I took photos. The next day, they were gone. On Saturday, we had a minor power outage. Nothing major, but the backup generator took 30 seconds longer than usual to kick in. During that time, I was in the morgue alone. The lights died, and I froze mid-step, holding a tray of biopsy samples. Then I heard it. A click, then another, like fingernails tapping metal, followed by the unmistakable metallic groan of a drawer sliding open. I didn't move. When the lights came back on, everything was still. Except the tray of samples I'd dropped. I hadn't even realized my hands had gone numb, and drawer 7 was partially open. I approached slowly, my heart in my throat. I told myself I'd find nothing, but the man's body was turned toward the back wall, facing away from me, curled again, just like when they found him. And in his mouth was a tooth, not his. It was old, yellowed, a molar with a silver filling. I bagged it and ran a full dental scan on the corpse. All teeth accounted for. The molar wasn't his. I ran tests. It didn't belong to anyone in the system. Sunday came and went. I refused to enter the morgue. I worked from upstairs. I drank too much coffee. I stared at the monitors. Drawer 7's internal temp began dropping inexplicably. The thermostat registered 3 degrees lower than the rest of the room. Still, Haynes didn't believe me. "Freezers fluctuate," he said, but I knew better. That night, I dreamed again, but this time I was inside the drawer. The door wouldn't open. I couldn't scream. I could feel the cold wrapping around me like a wet blanket. Then a voice whispered behind me, slow and distorted. You let me in. I woke up in sweat. My fingernails had mud under them. Monday morning, I came in to find Officer Lindstrom waiting. He looked pale, shaken. I heard breathing in there, he told me. He'd been doing a random walk-through and passed the morgue doors. Inside, he said, was the sound of long, slow breaths, not labored, calm, purposeful. He didn't go in. I don't blame him. Dr. Haynes finally agreed to move the body to a university lab for further examination. Maybe some weird chemical reaction, he said. I prepared the body for transport. As I placed it back on the gurney, I noticed something had changed. His face was no longer peaceful. He was smiling, not subtly, a full, teeth-bared grin, wide, inhuman. Every muscle of his face seemed stretched, frozen into a grotesque performance of joy. I stepped back, slipped, and dropped the file folder I was holding. As I bent to pick it up, the gurney creaked, loud. The body shifted slightly toward me. I didn't see it move, but it had. I could feel it. The lab at the university never received the body. Somewhere between pickup and drop-off, the van vanished, GPS disconnected, cameras blacked out. The vehicle was found 2 days later, empty, doors open, no driver, no body. Drawer 7 has been empty since, but some nights when I pass the morgue, I hear tapping. 7 slow taps. I've reviewed all footage. Nothing shows up. Last week, a new technician started working nights. I warned him to stay away from drawer 7. He laughed it off. 2 nights ago, he didn't show up for work. His car was found parked outside, keys in the ignition. We haven't seen him since. Drawer 7 is now sealed shut, welded. But sometimes I still hear it rattling. I've started dreaming again. I'm inside the drawer, and this time I'm not alone.